Hi, I'm Joni. Welcome to my channel. Today I want to do a book review for The Outsider by Stephen King. So I just finished listening to the audiobook of that a couple days ago. It begins with the very, very gruesome murder of a small boy. It begins with the aftermath of that, I guess. And there is a ton of evidence, a ton of eyewitness evidence, and also fingerprints and DNA forensic evidence pointing to a very prominent, well-loved member of town. He's a high school English teacher, I think. He's married with 2 daughters, and he's been the Little League coach for a long time. He was that boy's Little League coach, and he's very publicly arrested in the very beginning of the book. Unfortunately, he has a super, super solid alibi, and that's how it starts. You don't get a lot more than that in any of the synopses that I've read or heard, so I don't want to give away more than that. And while it's not listed as a sequel to the Bill Hodges trilogy, I would say that it's a pseudo-sequel to them. It's the same type of book. It's like a detective book is what I would categorize it as. And it has a ton of Holly Gibney in it from the Bill Hodges trilogy. She also gives away most of the major plot points from those 3 Hodges books. So I would definitely not recommend reading it unless you'd read those, even if you're okay with having those 3 books spoiled if you don't ever want to read them. I think that you would enjoy it a lot more. One of the main things that I enjoyed of it was Holly Gibney. And I don't think that she would be near as enjoyable if I hadn't met her and, seen her journey through those 3 Bill Hodges books, because she really develops a lot in those, and yeah. So I want to start with the things that I didn't love so much so that I can end on a high note. I did find it quite repetitive and a little bit slow some of the time. There were a few things that I think were done for effect that I didn't find very effective to begin with. So when for instance, there was a cantaloupe metaphor. By the 20th time I'd heard that, I was just kind of irritated by it, and it felt a little hokey. There were a few different things like that it kept using, I felt, for effect, and I just was a little bit over them after the second time they were done, basically. It was also a little bit predictable for me. I think that Stephen King can be super original. I know he's written a ton of stuff, and sometimes, like with the Bill Hodges books, I felt that they were just super original. This one, I was able to predict a lot of the major plot points that happened, the fates of some of the characters, things like that. So there's that. If you haven't read a ton of Stephen King, I don't think that you would. I think that I couldn't pinpoint any specific books that I felt did the same things, but I'm confident in saying that it's from other Stephen King books that I was able to so clearly predict what some of the plot points were going to be. There was also, I wouldn't quite call it problematic language or elements, but there were some things that were close. I promise I'll quit talking about the Bill Hodges book soon, but in those books there was a young Black character who puts on a voice and uses language mimicking old stereotypes of Black people, which at first I found really funny, and then by the end I was kind of annoyed with. In this book, there's a Mexican-American character who does the same thing with Mexican stereotypes. He was born in America, but he was read in the audiobook with a bit of an accent, which I think was how it was meant to be. He uses words in everyday language, and even when he's not clearly putting on this fake persona or whatever, fake accent, maybe that wasn't intended, but that kind of threw me because maybe there are people, but I've never met anyone who was born here who has an accent. I mean, I've met people who came here as children and speak very, very clear English, but that might just be my experience. I also wasn't super impressed with some of the character growth, and I didn't find some of their actions especially believable. For me, it just wasn't one of Stephen King's better books. Yeah. Anyway, on to things that I did like. Well, I didn't think it was heavy-handed at all, and it went away pretty quickly. At the beginning, I very much felt like it was almost spotlighting the American justice system and what can happen, how people can be falsely accused, falsely imprisoned, falsely executed, or not falsely, how innocent people can go through that whole system even to the point of being executed. That could have been me reading into it because, like I said, it doesn't continue throughout it, but it does have a really nice kind of circular effect. You begin dealing with the police in an official capacity, and you end it. In the end, it does circle back to that. So for me, it kind of had that. And I know that Stephen King does get a little bit political, so I thought that could have been intentional, but again, if that's not something that is on your brain, I don't think that you necessarily would have thought about that. Anyway, that's something that I enjoyed. I did also really enjoy the circling back thing at the end, especially because it takes place in the 21st century, and it doesn't ignore the fact that when you have murders and if people go missing or these things happen, that you have to explain that to officials. It dealt with that at the end, which made it more believable to me when they kind of leave things dropping off at the end like that and don't explain how the characters got out of the situation, given that, these things have happened. It takes me out of the story and makes it much less believable and makes the final impact of it much less great for me. So I really enjoyed that with this one. I also very, very much enjoyed all of the Holly Gibney. If there were a book just about her, centered on her, I would love to read it. I kind of doubt there ever will be, but her character is just fun. She's clever and interesting, and I really, really enjoyed reading about her. The thing that I most liked about the book, though, I don't know how to put into words. I just didn't want to put it down. I can't pinpoint what made it compelling for me, except that it was a good, compelling read. I really had a hard time turning it off every time I had to. There was one day in the middle where I ended up not being able to listen at all, and I was super, super bummed about it. Even being in the middle of a physical read that I was loving and didn't want to put down, when I was put on this audiobook, within 30 seconds I was pulled back in and completely forgetting about this other book, and it was just a really solid book for me. So like I said, nothing mind-blowing, not a 5-star for me. It would have been a solid 4-star if not for me just continuously being irritated with these little repetitive things. So in the end, I gave it a 3-star rating on Goodreads, but 3.5 stars overall. I quite enjoyed it. I would recommend it if you've read the Bill Hodges trilogy. I would also recommend the audio. I do like the narrator, and it is the same one who does the Bill Hodges books. So that's nice if you are into reading audiobooks. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I'd love to chat with you about the book down below if you are so inclined, and have a great day. Bye.